some of your responses, I think, dovetails nicely into our first question, which is typically as advocates, our stories start from somewhere. Our passion begins from somewhere. So can you all share kind of what has inspired you or what continues to inspire you up to this point, and maybe share a personal experience or two that you draw from continually as you raise your voices?
I mentioned being a part of Freedom School. What drew, like I was a scholar, so we call them scholars, all of the students. When I was younger, what really drew me to that movement is I was blessed to come from a two-parent home. I have 6 sisters. When it came to education, like I feel like my family was a blessing in terms of like helping with teaching, and I was always like smart, so I was like in advanced classes and such. But when it hit high school, it kind of hit me that there was an achievement gap even for me, like having a family who supports me. I went to a Spanish immersion, so I'm fluent in Spanish. So K through 8, I learned everything completely in Spanish. So we translate that over to high school. I get to high school and I can't spell. And I've always been good at like explaining myself verbally, or like if you gave me an essay, I could do that beautifully, but the problem was I couldn't spell. So even though you understood what I was saying, you still, like, grammar was horrible, and part of the gap was that I learned everything initially in a whole nother language. My issue with my teachers, so I'm a graduate from Central High School, absolutely love the school, love all of my teachers, I appreciate them, but I kind of was salty because I'm like, I was in all the IB AP English classes, and somehow I made it all the way to college, and I didn't know the difference between there, and there. But somehow they chose to pass me along, because I'm like, there's no way that none of you guys noticed that I cannot spell. And so you would put the A on my paper and pass me along, and like, that to me was like a minor problem compared to how other students really get passed along. And so I never knew that I enjoyed teaching. I never knew that I like had a passion with teaching until I realized like I was kind of failed as a student because I had teachers who, instead of, and not to knock any of my teachers at all, they did an amazing job and I'm still thankful, but I'm like, how did I make it all the way to college and I still don't know how to spell? So then it was like a personal thing where I had to start teaching myself, like, okay, this is the difference between these things. You put a comma right here, you use a semicolon here, and even now at 23, there's still some stuff that I'm like, I'll write a paper out and I'll be like, don't judge how I spelled it because I know it's wrong. I learned stuff in Spanish, it is what it is. But then that is what moved me into Freedom School, because I'm like, we have to, being a teacher, it's not a profession that you go into if you want to get paid. Being a teacher, literally, your heart literally has to be in it. And when I started at Freedom School, I think I was 18 going into, I was gonna be 19, and somebody had quit. So there's 3 levels. There's level 1, 2, and 3. Level 3 is the middle school students that nobody wants to teach, because we all know middle school is like that age. So someone quit last minute, and I've always been known for like being a leader and kind of throwing myself in there. So this young 19-year-old is like, I'll teach the middle school, and everybody's kind of looking like, you're not qualified to teach middle school. And how I saw it, I was like, my theory is, I think that I'm more qualified because there's less of a gap. So when they talk about certain things, or like when they do certain things, because my friends are probably talking about the same things, we were able to create this connection. And so I've been teaching level 3. I'm not currently teaching like this summer, but it was like this amazing relationship that we were able to develop. And like what I realized is like, I didn't have a problem checking the kids, or I didn't have a problem being like, you don't know how to spell, just because it's like, we have to be okay with like disciplining and correcting so that we're not setting these kids up for failure. And I feel like, yeah, I came from a blessed family, I'm doing all right, but I still feel like I was failed. And so that's what pushed me into like being passionate about teaching, being passionate about our babies, as well as like, coming from Central High School, there's over 150 staff, and this is one of my college essays that I wrote about. Me being a person of color, there's only 4 teachers when I graduated who taught a core class. 4 teachers of color who taught a core class. And so I'm not saying that the other teachers weren't effective for me, but I see the effect, like with Freedom School, a lot of the teachers are Black, a lot of the students are Black, and we're able to create a better connection with them. Just because like, let's talk about it. We're all in this room. naturally when it comes to color, you're gonna gravitate towards the people who look like you because that's like a common thing we already know we have. And so it's like, okay, I see you're black, I'm gonna sit next to this black person because I don't see any other black people. And like kids are the same way too, like naturally they're instantly gonna feel more comfortable because they're like, hey, you kind of look a little bit like my mom, you look a little bit like my dad. So before I talk too much, that's kind of like how I was introduced or what drew me to the movement and why I'm still so passionate about it, because our babies need people who look like them. Let's just be honest about it, they do.
So I was blessed to have a mom that like understood the life of being a black woman in America, and like people in our community call her the female Malcolm X. So I was blessed to have her, and she was really like the building blocks of the things I work on and the connections I like to make. And then I was blessed to go to a middle school and high school that was grounded in racial equity work and doing the foreign agreements, and being in Dare to Be Real for a couple of years really helped set me up to talk and have these conversations about race and racial injustice, and then building that and going on to talk about more things that are outside of the racial justice category, going into feminism and talking about the disparities of women of color in each movement, and just branching out. And so I would really say my like core teachers in my high school, middle school, my English, my math, my science teachers really were all about pushing, like having conversations about racial equity, and that really helped build me up to be able to come and do these things and do the work that I do today. Like my supervisor now, Aggie, she taught me in 7th grade, and then she taught me in college. So it's just about the connections I've made over the past like years that have led me to be able to come and do advocacy work and activism.
Okay, so I did mention I went to South St. Paul High School, and I've been going to South St. Paul since like my 3rd grade year up until senior year. So my 3rd grade year up until 10th grade, I was like the only black student in my classes. I went to a predominantly white school. But once BPO was created in my junior year, those 2 years helped me like embrace the color of my skin and helped me find my voice. Something that BPO and other groups at my school helped me accomplish was getting STOLs approved. Have you seen like those STOLs at college graduations? Yeah, so my cousin graduated like at Mankato 2016, and I saw him wear a graduation stole, and I was like, well, I want to wear one of those for my high school year, my high school graduation. And we had some issues in the past where students wanted to wear a flag, but we couldn't wear it for some reason, but I decided I should stand up and actually do something about it. It was a long process, but we finally got it approved. It didn't like turn out the way we wanted it to, but but we still got some work to do next year. Sadly, I won't be there to see it happen, but I'm just proud of like that group over there. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would be right now. I don't know if I would find myself either, so thank you guys.
So I was born in West Africa, Togo, and so I came to America when I was 7 years old. And so I grew up just kind of like understanding that I was just like a person, but I didn't understand like what it meant to be a black woman, what it meant to be a black Muslim woman. And then coming into this country was when like I started realizing the different ways in which I was different, right? And so my getting into advocacy was really about survival, because you can't survive being a black Muslim immigrant woman without understanding what it means to be that in America. And so a lot of this is just like me trying to like find, and I sit in conversations with people all the time, and especially in academia, you have to sit in conversations with people all the time. All we do is, so like, all we do is ever talk with each other. But in that, I learned that it's a learning moment for every single person who's in that space, right? And so I realized how important like education is to how we talk, how we do equity work, and you can't just get into it without learning something. So you have to learn something about yourself, learn something about the people around you before you can do advocacy, right? Because you can't just jump in. And so that, like, for me, that's where I started to get a lot of my wanting to do advocacy, because I was sitting in spaces with people who were teaching me new things about myself, and I was also being able to give them perspective they never understood. And I've been going to a PWI for like predominantly white institutions like for a really long time, and I went to Minneapolis Public Schools until my high school was Southwest, and I sat in spaces with a lot of white people for a really long time, and I go to Hamline University and I sit in spaces with a lot of white people all the time, and we talk about these things in very constructive ways and very like, and in higher education, everyone's always using big words, and everyone's like, feels cool about like understanding, and everyone's like, it's the pedagogy. And yeah, and so like, education is so important in the advocacy part of it, but like being able to say those words but not understanding like where they're coming from and the lived experience that people have is so important to it. So that's where advocacy comes from for me.
So I moved here from Kentucky about 2 years ago to Forest Lake. And if you know anything about Forest Lake, not diverse at all. And the school I came from was very diverse, so I struggled like pretty bad. I would go home and go to my room and just cry every day. And then I joined the equity team at our school with a friend, just because she was also Black, and so we were just looking for somewhere to go, and so we had like an activity fair at school, and we were like, oh, we'll just join to kind of see so we can meet some people. And so we joined that, and that group was definitely like the thing that made me who I am today, and the reason that I choose to do advocacy and stuff. So.
I'm from California. I'm from Northern California. I moved here 7 years ago, so it was a big culture shock. Like everybody from where I'm from looks like me, like a question mark. Like you don't even know who that person might be, you know what I mean, what their ethnic background is, like. And then to come to Minneapolis specifically and to be so shocked because my mom had talked up Minneapolis to be this diverse, very welcoming, gay space, you know what I mean? Like very understanding. And then I got here and I was like, segregation. What's going on? Like, so I started 8th grade. As soon as I got here, graduated, went to Southwest, and was in complete awe that I didn't have any teachers for my core classes that were anybody of color. All of our janitors were people of color. All of our support staff were people of color, but nobody that I had a class with was a person of color. And that was a big problem for me because I was already having so much of an identity crisis to be so distanced from somebody that looks anything like me or that can have a conversation with me and maybe resonate with where I'm coming from, especially in my favorite classes, English and history. It was hard, and then for this outpouring of violence in social media to just hit high schools the way it hit us when we were in school, it was a shock. And then to have to deal with that in classrooms and see the obvious, like, you're not understanding me, was where I realized, like, it's time to do something. I want somebody, if not a teacher, somebody in my school that can understand where I'm coming from, have a conversation with not only me, but people that look like me, people that are as upset as me, going to school every day, looking on Twitter or Facebook, like, that's what woke me up, was looking around every day, and these kids walking up to the school that had just watched a video of somebody getting shot, you know what I mean, watching these Edina moms like roll past and passive aggressively like roll up their windows in their Range Rovers. Sorry, y'all know how that feels, but like that kind of stuff like adds on. It makes you more prone to be upset. It makes you, you know what I mean? It's a trigger, basically. So that's what woke me up. I was like, we can't do this anymore. We gotta have conversations. Y'all gotta wake up.